friends. Look, I'm breaking the rule about the masks. They're all like, how are we? Are we good? Oh, good. There's Yejun now. And we have some guests here, and we have some YouTube people. We're up in the double digits on YouTube right now, people. So, I know. Yes. So, welcome, everybody. And I know we'll have more YouTube friends later on. I think everybody knows this, but my name's Jamie Lee Jocelyn, and it is my distinct honor to be in the driver's seat for this 10-day odyssey we've all been on. This is our culminating moment, or one of several, I guess. I feel like we've been wrapping up for most of today, and we'll do a little bit more wrapping up tomorrow. Toby's here, so we can officially start. And we're going to get to hear a little glimpse of everybody's work from the last 10-ish days, which is awesome. First, I'm going to give a whole bunch of thank yous because it is just absolutely required. So first of all, thanks to the Writers House staff for every single thing they've done over these days. And that includes Andreas, our in-house photographer. That includes Zach, who's back there at the tech. Yes, that includes some folks who are not here right now. Allie Katz, Andrew Beal, Julia Morales. They have done some of, and they're various helpers. Allie has been in charge of so much of what we have eaten. And Andrew and Julia have dealt with so many forms and so many details of getting us here and keeping us here safely and all of that. And we have a couple Writers House staff members here, like Amber in the back, who's been around and been a big supporter of the program. And I know Lucas is here as well. And then we have all these craft session instructors. Karen Ryle, Isaac Essex, Allie Katz, Jesse Schwartz, Mary Tassillo, Michelle Turansky, Izzy Lopez, who's back there, Heidi Kalu, who's over there, Caitlin Moore, Kristen Martin, Davey Niddle. Can we just give a big, oh my gosh. We also had support from folks in Penn's Department of Public Safety, Paige Wigginton especially, and Joe Comas. Joe taught us how to stay safe and not set buildings on fire. And Paige was a guiding light the whole time. And also our colleagues from Penn Admissions who came and taught us about applying to Penn and applying to college generally yesterday. So that was Sarah and Akasua. Penn Hospitality Services. Jalea was our contact there, and we're very, very grateful to her. And we have a bunch of high school partners who sent some folks this way. John Burroughs School, Young DFW Writers, Achievement First, Teen Sharp, Orange County School of the Arts, St. Joe's Prep, the Adroit Journal, Ellipsis Workshop. I'd also like to thank the internet because some of you found us from the internet. Who found us? Who applied to this program because you saw us somewhere just from your own research? I know some of you did. Yeah, okay. You just oh yeah, I saw it. Our RAs who are off doing RA things right now, Anaya Wells and Jacqueline Frisky, and also Stephanie Turner who recommended them to us. Then our core staff, we've got Jesse Schwartz. We've got way in the back, Wes Matthews. And then we've got the person who shares part of my brain, David Marchino. I also want to thank all of our students' families, some of whom are here. The Philly crowd is representing here. It's no small feat sending your kid away for 10 days when we're still dealing with a pandemic in the middle of the summer. For some of you, it's a longer way than others. And there's just, so I really am grateful to everybody who helped get you people here in every sense of the word. And then finally, our friends Maury Povich and Connie Chung. Do you guys know who they are? Yeah. They make this whole thing happen. I was emailing with Maury last night. It's very cool. And he and Connie made this program happen from the start. They've made it so we get to keep doing it forever and ever, which means that I will never die. And we're super, super, super grateful to them. So let's give them a big round of applause. Yes. And of course, the people we're really the most grateful for are the 20 people who we're going to hear from tonight. And we do have 20, so I should stop talking so they can talk. So each of our folks are going to read just a little snippet of something they wrote in the 2 to 3 minute range each. So the meat of our program will be about an hour. As you guys can see, we didn't talk about this earlier. If you feel comfortable, because we are a little bit distanced up here, if you want to take your mask off while you read, you are welcome to. If you prefer to keep it on, as we all know, I will never tell you not to keep your mask on. So you are welcome to do whatever you want. We're just going to go ABC order because that's the way the list goes. And that means we're going to start. So we have 3 Davids in this program. And we're going to start with David the first. So here he comes. Come on up. Do you want like entrance music? Oh, no.
Wait, isn't it alphabetical by first or last name?
All right. The experience of watching it die, it was something so new to me. It was like watching your favorite character in your own favorite TV show finally get killed off, or them experiencing something completely life-changing which ruins the depth of their character. I stared with morbid curiosity due to small cracks and crevices that were the spaces between my mom's dark brown fingers, as I saw the one I called friend let out its last bleats of misery before it was ultimately hacked to death. Her covering my eyes was her crude attempt to try and shield me from the horrors of brutality and gore, trying to keep me away from watching a living creature lose its life in one of the most unpleasant methods possible, slaughter. Unbeknownst to Mom, her attempts were futile as I managed to get disturbing glimpses of the animal's head slip off its large neck and plop on the floor like a bursting water balloon. I gazed intensely at its exposed body. The only thing that followed was something worse. It was the gut-curdling sound of hide tearing open, like scissors cutting through paper. It was also the noise of my uncle's constant cutting with the machete on the goat's body so he could butcher its body into multiple bloody pieces. Strings of red sprawling across the floor on the courtyard of my uncle's home, covering the far corner of the courtyard with an intense coloration of red that changed the goat's beautiful white hide into a cloak of grime ruby. It was as if paint was being splattered across on a white canvas in such an erratic but ferocious fashion, as if an artist had gone mad when painting because they couldn't grasp the idea of what to draw because it was so fleeting. While I stood there, my mom tried to pull me inside, each pull becoming more forceful than the other. But I persisted anyway, watching him get completely butchered.
Our next reader is Seneca.
Hi, my piece is called Melodrama. Lord's songs perfectly encapsulated how it felt to be a teenager, wild and fluorescent. The tracks fell easily into the background of my life, a soundtrack to moments I didn't know would become memories. The Louvre. We drove down I-5, Sydney's blonde hair pouring out the window and into the night sky. Well, summer slipped us underneath her tongue. Our days and nights are perfumed with obsession. Spilled from my stereo, coating the air with an intoxicating sense of comfort. It was 11 and a school night, but no one cared enough to tell us what to do. The end of junior year was like that. Enough freedom to feel alone, but not enough to quench the craving for more. Her hands wrapped tightly around a red Gatorade and a pack of neon sour worms as she complained about gymnastics and other things I didn't quite understand as well as she did. But not knowing was the beauty of nights like these, nights where we took turns picking streets until we became hopelessly lost in a town we could navigate as automatically as we breathed. There was a comforting feeling in being both unsure and safe simultaneously, Like suddenly there were no more risks left to take, no more wrong turns, or at least none that mattered. Perfect places. We laid under the comforter I got in 4th grade and stared up at the glow-in-the-dark stars pressed to my ceiling. Rachel draped her arm across mine, and we were close in a way I can only be with her. We talked about the future, and for the first time it felt real, like I could almost feel it against my skin. I wish we could just stay in the moment. Everything was perfect at this moment. We were lying in the same way we had almost every other week for the past 10 years, and there was comfort in the familiarity. Outside of this moment, I was just a sophomore with too much to prove. But here, with her, I was the years of thoughts, feelings, and memories that sat shared between us like a language only we could speak. She locked her pinky with mine, a silent promise that this would never change, no matter distance or time. What the fuck are perfect places anyway? Yeah.
Our next reader is Bruno.
Hello. This story is about my dog being attacked and killed. I'm going to skip past the attack itself, and I'm going to describe my reaction to it. My father and I wrapped him in a blue blanket and carried him home. He was barely 10 pounds. I screamed incoherently at passers-by who asked what happened. All I could think to do upon opening my door was to take a shower. It was days and days of that. My mother canceled my flight. I was in a twilight sleep. I felt I couldn't scrub off the scent. I kept imagining that pit bull still living, breathing with great pain in a pound somewhere. I learned that I broke off a few of its ribs and teeth, but that gave me no satisfaction. It was violence. I had seen violence. I had been violent in response, and I had failed. And that guilt from losing the fight mixed with my natural grief and trauma. My unconscious became fixated on the event. I scrubbed the sights and sounds of death from my memory, but the smell of blood lingered in my nostrils. It was sickly sweet, like a wilted tulip. I convinced myself that my clothes and body were tainted by the odor. I could only bring myself to wear one pair of pajamas for days on end. I remained in bed, squeezing every painful thought out of my mind, and tried my hardest to sleep. When I wasn't wasting away in my room, I would ritually purify myself in the shower. I tried to cleanse my soul by lathering my body in soap. I avoided any food that reminded me of death. This cycle ate up my days. I showered and slept and stopped eating meat. This was my twisted way of coping through avoidance. But when I was finally rested and ready to listen to those around me, they said with one resounding voice that I had been brave. My fight was just, even if it was brutal. I showed more love for my dog in those 3 minutes than I could have in a lifetime of uneventful peace. All my life, I had been so removed from brutality. My only exposure to gore was in over-the-top media. But Hollywood's romanticized fight scenes are a far cry from the desperate scrambling of real violence. Real violence isn't heroic. It is sad and awkward and ends in tragedy. The moment I saw my dog's lifeless body, I knew I could never take death lightly again. I remained a vegetarian for 2 more years. I began to treasure peace above all. I even grew to forgive the pit bull, whose name, I learned, was Dallas. His instincts were nothing personal. He had no concept of my attachment to Monty. He acted out of natural bloodlust. I acted only out of flaming love. I wasn't tainted by defending Monty. My caring humanity was made manifest. Whenever the awful smell of that awful day came back to me in memory, I repeated my new mantra. I tried with all I had, and that was enough.
Our next reader is Stephanie.
Okay, so we're going from Dead Dogs to the Beastie Boys. Yeah. So my piece is called The Illest Adidas on the Block. What's the time? Time to get ill, of course. The Beastie Boys album, License to Ill, changed my perception of reality. Want to know why? Because not only did it openly display the fact that I have no idea how to spell license, its perfect mixture of satire, fun references, great mixings, and voices transported me to their posse, their nonstop trip to Brooklyn, their self-proclaimed new style, and of course, their triumphant fight for the right to party. I felt that I related to their lyrics, even though I had never experienced something with lots of beer, lots of girls, and a lot of cursing, and I never did have a 22 automatic on my person. As Eminem so eloquently put it, they're the white run DMC. This was a flawless execution of a jokey album, and I loved it.
And next is Yeanna.
So I'm going to be reading an excerpt from my memoir, Queen of Angst, if I can just pull it up. My godbrothers who used to watch Mighty Morphin Power Rangers when I was 5 years old and taught me the version of karate were gone. Before you ask, no, they were not dead. They were just beginning the next chapter of their lives. All I could hear was, sat on a fence, but it don't work. Keep coming with love, but it's so slashed and torn. Thinking that the relationship between my godbrothers and I would change forever. Mom was still working her 12-hour shift at the hospital in Philadelphia. Shout out to Mom who's watching. Coming home, we would have brief conversations about mundane things in life before she ran upstairs to clean up and retire for the night. All my friends that I came into middle school with in the beginning moved on to other friend groups, leaving me with only my thoughts and emotions to keep me sane during the long days and monstrous nights. Throughout the day, I kept thinking, chipping around, kick my brains around the floor. These are the days it never rains, but it pours, experiencing the anxiety of interacting with others who barely knew me. On most lunch periods in the school here, it was always a scuffle to figure out which group of friends to sit with. No matter how hard I tried to make conversation with the people at the various picked lunch tables, I always felt like a gnat that people couldn't chew away. After a short time of inferred rejections from my family and friends, not Mom, don't come for me, I fell into a storm of depression where a very dark cloud appeared above my head and all my ears could recognize was thunder and rain. My peripheral would only allow my retina to identify everything either gray or white, reflecting my mood of despair, frustration, anger, hurt, and my understanding of not understanding anything at all. Understanding what made me so abnormal or unlikable that people wouldn't want to get to know the nice girl. But one day, something happened, a reason for me to search for a shred of happiness. Thank you. Love you, do not come for me.
And next is Ruby.
Just need a second to get it up as well. All right, so my piece is called Choose a Pair, Commitment's a Collection. While I consider myself a teenager no different than the next, I must admit that the nature of my activities in the duration of this past year has brought me into a rather peculiar hobby. I collect favorite t-shirts belonging to the boys I've kissed, an anthology consisting of their dearest garments, merchandise both stolen and gifted, in exchange for the time loitered in their presence. I am a girl who, for the majority of my brief and largely tedious existence, has known the difference between right and wrong. Though my actions might describe me a heedless thief, I assure you this is not the case. Those who know me impute to me a Robin Hood of sorts, a bandit of boys' beloved band tees. I do not think stealing to be honorable, only I find retribution for the years I've spent avoiding confrontation for their missteps, in the swaths of fabric men hold dear to their hearts. At present, my collection consists of a measly 2 tops. The first shirt of my collection belongs to Wolfie, a boy I find to be petulant and galling. The top, embossed with 4 human beings unfamiliar with the touch of a woman and the word Weezer, written in all caps above their heads, is a rare collector's item. The tale of how it fell into my possession is disconcerting and interminable, but even so, I feel inclined to preface it with the warning that my opinion has been fortified by a great deal of time since claiming the abomination of a garment, that I spent staring at the faded navy blue shirt with contempt. Should I be forthright, I'm sure I was enamored with Wolfie at the period in which we spoke. There have been many occasions I've lived to regret in this lifetime, but at the expense of sounding like a wench, my disdain towards my car ride with Wolfie remains the first. He often enjoyed harping about inconsequential matters and the difficulties of being a white cishet male. Wolfie took it upon himself, one frosted and bitter February noon to escort me on an idyllic drive where his genius prevailed in his decision to play Radiohead. This admonition was a true testament to his romantic abilities. Now, I was willing to entertain his antics, or I had best attempt to enjoy myself considering the time we'd spent conversing over the past 3 months. Being a woman of nonpartisan nature, I set aside the dissonance between his abhorrent choice in music and my own dignity and allowed him to kiss me. I suppose it was long anticipated, obdurate in my resolve that I appreciated his presence romantically. Had he played any other song, I might have lasted longer, but Tom York's voice is intolerably disconsolate and disenchanting. Sitting in the back of Wolfie's mother's Toyota Camry, I totaled the minutes I'd be compelled to sit shivering while expertly circumventing a conversation. Admittedly, the state of affairs would have been salvageable had the turmoil halted following the kiss. The quietest was the car battery's death, when the temperature plummeted as the engine hadn't been running. It was fortunate that, despite its atrocity, the Weezer tea was available in the trunk to conserve warmth. Of course, I had hitherto been wearing a sweatshirt and a jacket, but February's ruthless bite nipped my skin raw. Given the urgency of the situation, I begrudgingly slipped the heinous top on and never returned it. I thought it a requisite for the anguish I'd endured. Thank you.
Cutting commentary on the music of my youth. Next is Sophie.
Hi guys, I'll be reading a piece called Weighted Blanket. My soft, light blue weighted blanket has become an essential element to how I fall asleep at night, tucked beneath its secure and comforting protection. My mom gifted me the blanket many years ago as a Hanukkah present. That very night, I laid it across my bed beneath my poofy white comforter and snuggled in below its warmth. At first, I was surprised by how transformative this new addition was to my comfort. I felt a new level of security I had never before experienced. Within the blanket lies a dozen pounds worth of sand, sealed in by a zipper along the side. This weight lulls me into relaxation, hinders my bouncing feet, and pacifies the restless motion of my mind, all symptoms of an unknown struggle I would come to identify as ADHD. My childhood was marked by many turbulent nights, where falling asleep felt like the greatest challenge of all time. Each night I would try to sleep, my struggle similar to maneuvering a boat through tempestuous waters. I could sail for hours, longing to reach a point of stillness, where the sea becomes calm and serene. My weighted blanket helped to ease my hyperactive body and racing mind, calming the violent sea of my nights. Although my restless nights became less frequent, much of my life was still characterized by those same rough waters. Noticing my struggles with schoolwork, my parents sent me to therapy. I was repelled by the idea and offended that they suggested it, yet nevertheless I dragged my feet to the office. I talked for hours in that dimly lit room, sitting on that crimson-colored couch. I delved into the depths of my struggles and experiences. As I opened up about my life, bringing the unacknowledged mix of emotions to the forefront of my thoughts, I was able to create tangibility from the intangible. I started journaling, putting pen to page, heart to mind, intangible to tangible. The ink on those lined pages reflected almost every aspect of my inner world. From emotional tangents about my crush to confessions of obscure secrets, my journal became the dumping ground for all of my thoughts and feelings. Through these practices, I was able to climb to the top of the very mountain I feared, a place to my surprise of security and safety. When I looked down, my anxieties and doubts appeared so small, so distant. Therapy and journaling became my new weighted blanket, a way to calm the turbulent waters of my life. In learning how to manage my ADHD, I've deconstructed the barriers that prevented me from not only falling asleep at night, but feeling confident in myself and my abilities regarding schoolwork. I've come to appreciate my disorder and discovered how to blossom with its presence. I'm happy with who I am, someone who loses her train of thought mid-sentence, typically can't sit still, who loves to write and learn, listen to music and dance, who likes to lift weights and go for runs. I struggle with the disorder, but I'm dedicated to overcoming, living life impassioned by endless possibility. I continue to grapple with the same turbulent waters in a society that demands that people sit still, listen to lectures, and focus on completing work. I still have moments where I'm burdened by self-doubt, lack of focus, and other internal battles. Yet, unlike my 7th grade self, I now have trust in my abilities. As I lay in bed at night, I have faith in knowing that I no longer depend on my light blue weighted blanket in order to fall asleep. I am my own weighted blanket, bringing a future of nights with tranquil waters.
And next is Toby.
Hi, everyone. This is a direct address memoir I wrote to my grandma Terry, who I never met. And I'm going to start with a quote. How can you know what is missing if you've never met it? You must know of something's existence before you can notice its absence. By author E.L. Konigsberg. I certainly know of your existence and absence, Grandma Terry. For a significant portion of his life, my dad had two parents. His mother, Monica, a South African Jew, was raised in London and has a stubborn will, but a sweet disposition. His father, Judd, was an American, born in New York, earning a Purple Heart and gunshot wound in his right palm during a service in World War II. Mom, however, only seemed to have one parent, her father, Simca, the master cellist and self-acclaimed comedian. But that's only three. You have always been missing. I would watch as my school held the annual Grandparents' Day celebration. Pairs of elders flooded the elementary school gym. They found sets of chairs, gradually lowered themselves in to avoid the ongoing threat of injury, and immediately grasped each other's hands. Simca never grasped your hand. You have always been missing. This prompted my fascination. I wanted to know who you'd been and how you carried yourself, but I understood the fragility of grief. I never pried Mom for a single story, a single answer. On occasion, she would dip into her plethora of tales about your vibrant existence. She would share that you were a fabulous cook. You could masterfully string together an elaborate meal, often offering up a stuffed pepper, potatoes, or an Israeli salad in conjunction with a Cornish ham, roast pork, or your famous bouillabaisse. I wish I could have tried one of these meals. I wish I could have seen you cook, but I never could. You have always been missing. Mom would tell me about your specificity, your elegance. You required every meal to be served on ceramic dishes. You insisted each drink or platter be rested on a tray to avoid even the slightest chance of wrinkling the table. You wouldn't accept takeout or paper plates. They were sacrilegious. I would love to sit at dinner with you. I can't. You have always been missing. Mom would tell me about your wit and intellect. These traits enabled you to attend any college you desired, even of the utmost academic excellence. Nevertheless, you decided to choose Syracuse. You wanted to have fun. You did. Mom told me about your love and mastery of the card game bridge, how you were a ranked competitor for the city of New York, how she often found you sitting at the kitchen table, dealing, shuffling, and driving the 52 cards from one side of the table to the other, to the other, to the other. You didn't just play, but you perfected the intricate game. And every few seconds, you took a repetitive drag out of your cigarette and gracefully puffed the gray cloud into the center of the room as if you were marking your territory with your weapon in hand. I wish I could have sat down at that table with you. You could teach me how to play, how to move with such precision and certainty. But we can never share this game. You have always been missing. Thank you.
Next is Yoon.
So this is an excerpt from a memoir titled DSC_3524.jpg. Avant-garde title, I know. So I was overwhelmingly bored when I stepped into my family's embattled Bellevue SUV on March 16th, 2020. COVID-19 and its incomprehensible scope continued to ramble outside, forever marching subliminally in my mind as we masked up and mentally prepared ourselves to maintain substantial distance between ourselves and fellow visitors from God knows where that breathed God knows what through their oftentimes unmasked faces. There was a risk in going outside before we knew about transmission and its reduction when outdoors, but after weeks inside, idly waiting for our school's frantic assembly of what had been deemed remote learning, I needed to get outside. And so it was a sunny day, the clouds largely vacant, and when we arrived at our destination, a relatively popular park with a cracked asphalt road and worn-down grass, characteristic of the various well-trodden Seattle parks designed for wealthy families and taxed parents looking for a tamed wilderness, Mount Rainier remained predictably faint but visible in the distance. The only elements separating this visit from yet another mediocre jaunt through a park were the Nikon D300S camera I held in my hands, a desire to get outside, and overflowing curiosity about avian life, following a series of sparks. A peregrine falcon episode on the show Wildcrats, laying the seed for my persevering inner nature lover, a seagull chick and defensive parents on a Spanish island, watering the seed as it maintained residence in my barely teenage brain, and an Anna's hummingbird daintily perched on a lift tree next to our athletic center, finally metabolizing a passive love of birds into action. Grouping the entire pandemic under a single instance or experience feels reductive. Living during COVID has become a separate epoch, a life apart from everything that came before and what will likely come after, if there does indeed exist an after. I will not fail to admit that I am extraordinarily lucky. The fact that I was only bored at the beginning of the pandemic speaks to my own socioeconomic privilege, as does my affinity for birdwatching. After all, so many others would need to scramble for personal protection, whether from COVID's deleterious health effects or its disastrous economic, social, and mental detriments. But I only barely hesitate to say birding saved me. And that's where the excerpt ends.
And next is David L.
Sorry, I just need a... Okay, this is an excerpt, I guess. Okay, here we go. To writing, where would I be without you? Certainly not typing out this letter right now. I can tell you that much. You are a concept that extends back millennia, where we discovered your place of birth back in ancient Sumer. And since then, you have been essential to our species as a database of information and communication for all willing to learn. Your usefulness has not decreased over the years either, as you have expanded from physical to digital, your organized alphabets becoming a binary of ones and zeros. And I must thank you for all that you've done. I still stay up at sleepless nights, contemplating your joints, your bones, rearranging them into something new. A true protege of Frankenstein, but replacing sinew with syllables and viscera with vocabulary. My obsession is not to recreate life, it is to experiment endlessly, each arrangement a display of emotion and vulnerability that I cannot express through my own spoken word, but rather your repositioned limbs. The stitching of story with the thread of pen and paper, or keyboard and computer in more recent years has become my forte. I worry that time will come to an end. I feel increased frustration with your components, or rather my inability to string them together with new wires to be displayed. Those sleepless nights are not ones of calm focus, but of furious bouts of destruction, tearing you down at the slightest dissatisfaction with my work and starting over. My zen is interrupted by lingering thoughts, whispering me to leave the desk and search for entertainment beyond you. And that lure leads to the glow of technology, only the flip of a phone or a switch of the tab away. And yeah, that's my excerpt. Thank you.
And next is Yareli.
Oh, it's kind of... Yeah.
I never get to do this. I'm always the shortest one.
So, this is my title piece called Sweet Hatred. I do want to start I want to say before we start that it does have mentions of suicide. So if you are uncomfortable with hearing that, please step aside, please. Respectfully. When a little girl came crying to my bedroom and saw my suicide note, on the back of my Spirited Away postcard, you told me never to leave you. As you cried in front of me, never hugging me, but crying, I had hoped for you to never see me break down. I am your older sister. I wish you wouldn't see me in this state. I wish I would have stood up and hugged you, whispered to you, and I would have whispered to you that I will never leave. I should have told you how much I can't wait for you to become a dermatologist, to see you grow and grow away from my grasp. I am solely a lily in the valley, causing more harm. I had never treated you right. I admit to hurt you. I admit it, I didn't mean to hurt you, and I never wanted to make you cry. I don't hate you. I love you. And as much as I wish on a red moon that I could turn back time, I can't. Sweet hatred. I hate you. I hated you. How could I even compare with that? I hate you. It was jealousy. How could I? How much have I hurt you? Am I an evil sister? I didn't mean to hurt you. I never wanted to make you cry. I don't hate you. I love you. And as much as I wish on a red moon that I could turn back time, I'm sorry. Thank you. Wait. I love you so, lady.
And next is Yejun.
Hi, Oma. Hi, Appa. Hope you're doing well. And Appa, forewarning, I'm a little sorry. And Oma, I hope this counts as the talk you wanted us to have. Okay. One time in the car, I am laughing and my mother asks me why. I say that Dad was wrong, and playing along, she asks me to explain. Earlier in the day, I attempted to share with my father a murder mystery in which teenagers have to get away with patricide by feeding the body to pigs. I wanted advice on how to have a foolproof alibi considering the circumstances of the deaths, and when the internet failed, I went to him. Why wouldn't I? He's the cleverest person I know. He can catch plot holes and inaccuracies with the precision of a sniper, and I trusted his advice above all else. I asked him, and he, in turn, asked me for details. I want him to just answer my question. He insisted on details. I told him. He shot down the idea. He said you wouldn't get any readers with that story. He says, murders are senseless and horrible, and what you write with that, nobody I know would read. He said very simply that it was bad. So I interviewed various acquaintances, not friends. I didn't have many of those, by telling them my idea and asking if they liked it. They said, of course. They said, that sounds so cool. I can't wait to see it. They said, yes, all of them. Kids, the right age for a target audience, adults with mature viewpoints, a stranger on the internet. I asked anonymously how good something was if someone I admired so much didn't like it, and they responded with a yes. Yes, this is good, and your father's opinion shouldn't influence your writing. Yes, we need to have writings on topics like these, no matter what people think of them. Yes, your idea is wonderfully creative, and I love it already, and I hope you find a community who can appreciate what you do. I tell all this to my mother. He was wrong, I say, laughing. He was wrong, and suddenly I am crying, and my shoulders are shaking, and my voice breaks when I speak. He was wrong. It's not bad. They like it. They like it. They like me. Thank you. Bye.
Next, is Lauren.
Okay. Let me just get set up here. Hi. I'm going to be reading an excerpt from a piece called Letter to an Old Friend, A Summer Story. Dear old friend, when we first met that summer long ago, all I wanted to do was hang out with you. We were first graders then, and all you needed to make a friend was to have one thing in common. For us, we were weird. Everyone made fun of us, and especially you for it. In the summers after third grade, you came along with me on my magical and imaginary adventures. You enrolled in my magical university, signed up for the potions classes, created your own superpowers. I gleefully anticipated our playdates where I could show you my journals and dolls and Lego sets. I wanted to carefully observe every trinket in your room as if I were in a Smithsonian museum. Even though I hated riding in your mom's minivan, I still loved to go to your house. You had that wicked cool setup with the bunk bed on top and the desk below it. And you had several cats, some of which were foster cats. I didn't even like cats, but you did, and I admired how passionate you were about them. We grew apart. I can't remember why, but I know that behind your back, I would agree with the cool girls when they called you too weird and too energetic. I'd share a laugh with them. I'd think to myself, gosh, she's so immature. When you would energetically come up with a game to play during free time, I'd act all annoyed, like you were a burden, a stain I wanted to be free of. During summer camp, I'd leave you alone at lunch to sit with the girl who always picked on me and you, even though you were the one to soothe my spirits when I was overwhelmed by the university's lunch line. When I sobbed, tray in hand, you patiently guided me through the different stations and helped me figure out how to pay. Every summer day, you seemed fine, perfectly yourself. I used that as an excuse to keep betraying you. I was your Judas, and I was your Peter. I denied you. I denied our friendship. So maybe that's why we grew apart. Really, we hadn't. I'd pushed you away. Thank you.
And next is Anthony.
Okay, just gonna get set up. Hi everyone at home. Hi Miss Cook, if you're watching. Miss Cook's my English teacher. She went to Penn. She helped introduce me to this program, so I'm very grateful for that. So just, if you're watching, hi. This piece is called To Those Who Cared, I Love You. It's the story of someone at my school who tragically took his own life earlier in the school year, at the end of the school year, this May. So it was tough, right? Might be tough to hear, but yeah, thank you. To those who cared, I love you. These are the words you wanted us to know before you left us. Although I never truly knew you, I cared, and I love you too. To those who cared, I love you. I'll never forget where I was when I heard the news. Hanging out by my friend's pool just hours after we all took our last exams of the year. We had just become seniors, and you had graduation on Saturday. I remember the confusion in the voice of my friend's mom, who said she got a text from our school saying to expect an email in a half hour. The parents got the email about a half hour before the students, assuming this was so they had time to prepare and gather themselves before having to reread this news with their children. My other friend called his mom as soon as the email was sent to us, and she asked if we knew you. As with most people from our school, I said, not really, but the name sounds familiar. Still, I could not prepare myself for what I would hear next, and what would follow in the next 24 hours. To those who cared, I love you. That's how our Mass started. The Mass, or prayer service, itself was a blur, and quite frankly, I can't tell you anything that was said at that Mass other than those 7 piercing words, and the words from our school president, who had confirmed what we had all feared. Gentlemen, one of our brothers has taken his own life. This is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Nobody said a word during the rest of the Mass, except for the church-mandated responses at each prayer and part of the Mass. To those who care, I love you. I've never seen so many hurt people together in one place. We all just walked around school for hours after the Mass, not knowing what to tell each other. I'm sorry. How are you? What were we supposed to say? We were all sorry. And asking how are you felt pointless if we all felt the same thing. I wish I got to know you. I know it just would have made it harder in the end, but at least I'd be able to say that I'd seen you. Lost my place. That I'd seen you, that you weren't just another face walking down the hallway that I'd never know. I could have known the story behind that face instead of just recognizing it in a picture after you left us. I wonder what could have been. What would I have said? I've only heard the stories about you from people who knew you. In between the long silences, blank stares, and apologetic looks we all gave each other that day, I heard stories of how much you meant to everyone and how different it would be without you. Maybe I just wanted to relate to them more, or maybe something about you just seemed to stand out in those stories. I began to wonder what I lost. How could I possibly lose you if you were never in my life to begin with? I know it's wishful thinking to believe that if I knew you, maybe I could have done something. But that's what we all did that day. That's what we still do today. What else can we do? We hope you found your peace. We hopefully you finally found what you were looking for. From those who cared, we love you too.
next is Gia.
Okay. Hi, I'd like to give a shout out to Ryan because he was the first viewer on this live stream and has been supporting me since day one. I'm going to be reading an excerpt from a piece called French Cat. One of my most vivid memories from Bible study is assembling a collage from various magazines. My friends and I sat at the classroom table chattering under the fluorescent lights. Plastic craft scissors and Elmer's glue sticks were strewn across the table, and jagged pieces of National Geographic Kids littered the floor. The verse I chose to collage was the shortest in the Bible, John 11:35. I had carefully cut out all 9 letters. Jesus wept. Each letter was spaced equally on my page, all except the E in wept, which I could not find in a font that suited my finicky taste. I flipped through pages upon pages in the Reader's Digest for an E that would complete my collage, but to no avail. 10 minutes left, the teacher called from the front of the room. Panic spread across the classroom as 20 small children scrambled for magazines and construction paper. I flipped through the pages at a frantic rate, growing more and more panicked, when suddenly I looked down and realized I was wearing a bright red shirt with little frills that lined the sleeves. On the front was the silhouette of a sitting cat, bedazzled in gold rhinestones, and underneath the cat read French Cat in small print cursive. I don't know what compelled me to cut out a letter from my shirt. Maybe it was my distaste for cherry red, or maybe it was the elementary urge to constantly crave the spotlight, or maybe I was a budding creative thinking outside of the box, which I'd like to believe. Regardless, I took a pair of blue scissors and cut a small hole through the letter E. With 5 minutes left, I glued my assortment of letters to the page, in the process discovering that an Elmer's glue stick is not suitable for gluing fabric. And I did end up receiving a lot of attention that day. Applause from friends, a questioning look from my teacher, and a horrified gasp from my mom. Thank you.
And next, Gladys.
This is an excerpt from a piece I titled One Sock, Two Sock, Red Sock, Blue Sock. Usually, it only takes me and my sister a few minutes to excavate our respective gift piles at Christmas, but one present years ago made me pause and frown in confusion. I lifted a pair of mismatched socks from the mound of shredded paper and glanced around quizzically. One sock was a rebarbative shade of maroon with white and green polka dots, while the other was neon blue with orange stripes. I don't think I've displayed any tendency towards circus dressage, I remember thinking as I stared at the 2 electric eels laying in my lap. One frigid January morning, there was a fine layer of snow dusting our front lawn. I yanked on my parka along with the usual inoffensive socks before heading to the bus stop, but was halted by my mother before even making it to the front door. This was when I noticed the dreaded pair of socks in her hands. "These are the thickest ones you have. Put them on over the white ones right now. I don't want you catching cold." My Tuesday at school seemed to drag on forever, and when the final bell rang, I leapt out of my seat and dashed to the bus loop in a frenzied joy. When my bus finally reached my stop, I was the first one off. I then turned to gingerly grip my baby sister's hand as she made the leap from the bus's last step into the thick snow. We were halfway home when I heard a muffled thump behind me and turned to find my sister face down in the snow with our neighbor's son Charlie running in the opposite direction. Frances struggled to right herself, and the edges of my vision turned red. Charlie had always been an awful kid, but shoving a kindergartner was a new low. Adrenaline coursed through my brain as I thought about how to best return the favor. Chase him down? I wasn't a runner. Throw a snowball? It wouldn't go far enough. As I stared at his retreating back, an idea struck me. I hastily yanked off one boot and took the neon blue sock off, packing it full of snow. Charlie was a good runner, but the snow was slowing him down considerably. He was an easy target. I began to swing my makeshift discus in a circle, letting go only when I felt it had reached a speed capable of causing pain. I heard a thwack and watched Charlie go tumbling into the snow. I was in shock. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see that Frances's eyes were the size of saucers. I yanked my boot back on and grabbed Frances's hand, pulling her forcefully out of the snow and into an abrupt speed walk. Charlie began crying, and I heard his front door unlock behind us. "Stop right there, young ladies," shrilled Charlie's mom. She swung him into her arms and began marching towards us. Don't say a word, I muttered to Frances in Chinese as we swiveled to face her. As they approached, I noticed a satisfactory red welt forming on Charlie's cheek and the neon blue perpetrator in his mom's hand. Whose sock is this? She demanded, proffering my dripping sock. Charlie pointed at me, still sobbing, and her blue eyes fixated on my face. Frances and I both shook our heads, mute. Lift up your pants, the both of you, she ordered. Frances obediently pulled her leggings up to reveal matching yellow socks, while I pulled up my jeans to reveal one white sock and one maroon sock. You could have heard a pin drop in the silence that followed. She glanced at the sock in her hand, at my feet, then back at the sock. This isn't her sock, Charlie's mom explained to him, stumped. She gave us an apologetic look, then turned around to chase down the group of fourth graders walking home in the opposite direction. Upon arriving home, I swore Frances to secrecy. We ate dinner in silence, and when asked about school, we shrugged as if there hadn't just been an ESPN-worthy moment in both of our days. Thank you.
Next is Lakshmi.
Hi, this is Your Best American Girl. We're at a performance. You're singing Your Best American Girl by Mitski on a stage that wasn't built for you. A sticker-smothered guitar props in your arms. Each wooden plank on this stage is the ossified arm of a brown girl who carries too much. Every other stage was built for you. Give me just this one to stake my heart on. In 6th grade, at your dinner table before sleepover, your grandmother told me that her doctor was Indian and asked me if I liked naan. When I brought up the offhand joke to you 4 years later, you told me that your grandmother has dementia now and asked me if I felt bad for being uncomfortable. Was I meant to feel guilty? My own grandmother has also forgotten me, not because she has dementia, but because I don't see her for 5 years at a time. In 8th grade, you scooped mumra into your mouth and smiled at me, little grains spilling innocently from your lips as you told me word for word that you think you're more Indian than me because you can't handle spicy food. I used to agree with you, but we're older now, and the black braids down my back have only gotten heavier, as though each strand has been lathered in coconut oil for every year that I become more like a woman than a girl, so saturated in grease that no one wants to be near me. I want you to look in the mirror. I want you to look at your mother and father. Your skin is paper. Your eyes are blue. My eyes used to be just like yours when I was a baby, but they got swallowed by the brownness laced into my blood. The worst mistake I've ever made was letting myself brown. You're all I've ever wanted. All I see when I look at you is who I wish I could be. Do you really think you're more Indian than me? Ever since we've gone into 9th grade, boys have been writing shitty poems for you on Twitter, and girls have kissed you in the back seats of their cars. The night I came over to your house to watch a movie, the Italian foreign exchange student staying with you told me that it wasn't racist to have one's type be only white people. She told you that she wanted to marry a white man so her children would look like her. Where does that leave me? I have nothing ahead of me. Allow me to explain to you what paranoia is. Paranoia is sitting in my bedroom with our friends, talking about crushes and who's doing what with whom, and constantly peeking behind the tattered curtain to see if a car is pulled up. Paranoia is an irrational terror that all our conversations are being recorded. You tell me I'm the most anxious person you've ever met, but you'll never understand why I have to be, because you don't have parents like mine. Paranoia is not a party game. It's not a finger pointed at some stranger in a circle, a question revealed or never revealed depending on the flip of a coin. Or maybe that's exactly what paranoia is. I'm pointing my finger at you, but you'll never hear these confessions because I can't dare to lose you no matter how little you understand me. You're my best friend, after all, and I only know the song Your Best American Girl because of you, even if it was never written for you to sing on a stage built from my overburdened arms. Thank you.
Next is Myla.
Hello. The piece that I'm about to read was created during a craft session. It was actually Jesse's section. It was close reading for our writing. And I'd like to thank Jesse for creating a prompt that made me think and it was hard in a good way. The piece that I'm reading is untitled. The girl walked in with her hands stuffed deep into her oversized hoodie she never forgot to wear. Her mother sat at the kitchen table with her back turned to the window, observing the chip birdhouse they created. It sat perched on a branch outside. Less than 2 years prior, the mother explained building something with the intent to protect was always a necessity because the cries of the injured were unbearable. The girl walked slowly. She had learned walking around the house as if it was a landmine was the only way she could prepare herself. As she neared the kitchen table, the girl observed how neatly the tablecloth was spread across the circular table. The color of the tablecloth was cement gray. The mother thought it was important that all attention be drawn to these steaming plates that lay on top of the tablecloth, not the tablecloth itself. Her mother's chair was turned at an exact 45-degree angle, so she only needed to lift her head slightly to view out of the translucent window that sat right above the kitchen sink. Her mother made sure her view remained clear despite the window being tinted. After taking approximately 30 steps that made the distance from the doorway to the kitchen table appear as though a hallway stood in between the two structures, the girls finally sat down and pulled out the chair that put at least a meter of distance between her and her mother. The mother could finally sense the abrasive warmth that surrounded her daughter's body and turned around, putting her back to the kitchen window. The birds have not visited the birdhouse I created for about a week now, the mother said. The daughter remained silent. You know, Livy, I don't think I will ever understand why the things that are given are never appreciated. Shelter, nutrition, and love are always taken for granted. Yeah, humans and animals alike can never decipher a blessing from a curse. A curse? Yeah, a curse. The mother turned back to the window. 2 hummingbirds sat perched on the slab of wood that protruded out from the inside of the birdhouse. Still facing the window, the mother spoke. Livy, I never know what you mean. For 2 years now, you've acted like my words trigger the anger switch in your head. The daughter looked up from the gray of the table she had filled her eyes with to face the back of her mother's head. She never quite understood why her mother tightened her ponytail so tight. She could see her neck was covered in red. Thank you.
Next is Mei Ting.
Hi, so I'm just going to read an untitled piece. Blurs of pink, blue, green, yellow, brown, and probably a bazillion other colors fly from the closet and landed on top of my bedsheets. I quickly sorted the clothes into 3 piles. The clothes that I'll keep, the clothes that I'll gladly throw away, and the clothes I'm uncertain about. The next half hour passes by with me laughing and crying over my past sense of fashion. I was sorting through the clothes pretty easily, and only had a slight dilemma over a pair of red pants that had a Mickey Mouse print on it. It was hideous, and I will never wear it, but I felt bad because it costed a lot of money. My mom, the one who forced me to clean my closet, just sighed and threw it into the trash pile. I forgot about it 5 minutes later. I was on to my last pieces of clothing when I stumbled upon something that I never thought of during high school. A pink polyester hoodie with the brand name zoomed in with green fabric. A beloved old sweater that I wear almost every single day in middle school. I stared at it. It was old, it was small, it was unfitting for a high schooler. I have 100 reasons to get rid of it, but I just can't seem to bear putting it in the trash pile. When I first thought of it, I didn't get why I was so conflicted over this piece of clothing. I mean, I get it. Clothes hold memories, but middle school was an awful time for me. I was lonely for a good part of my 6th grade, stressed for a good part of my 7th, and awkward for a good part of my 8th because I just had to change my homework class. And that's it.
We have one left. I can't believe we did that. Our last reader is Inseo.
Hi, I'll be reading an excerpt from a memoir I wrote titled Almost Blue, Almost American.
Initially, I was intrigued by my friend's unfamiliarity with Korea and its culture. As the only Korean, indeed the only Asian in the town, I was eager to tell them about this small country located across the globe. I brought a cereal duck, a rice cake stacked in red bean and rice, savored with syrup that I have cooked to a school fair. And when my friends asked me to teach them Korean, I gave them a whole lesson and taught them to the best of my ability until they declared a give up. I enjoyed being the unofficial ambassador of my home country in the isolated town of Connecticut. My sense of alienation grew, however, as I encountered some moments when my behaviors were perceived as unknown to others. When I had bowed to my friend's parents once as it felt disrespectful to simply say hi and saw the blush on their face not knowing what to do, I felt ashamed of my behaviors that were normal in my hometown. Every time I found myself different from others, I felt the need to explain and make excuses for myself for what I was doing and for who I was. I became insecure about every part of my identity, from appearances to attitudes that identified my origin and my identity as an outsider. Seeing my purple Korean branded backpack with a design distinct from my friend's JanSport and the North Face backpacks, I found myself as an outcast of the culture. I was not wearing the uniform that the public middle school had in some form. I was no longer carrying a school bag, but a burden, a sign of my origin and my status as an alien. Whenever friends asked me the definition of Almost Blue, the name of the brand I was wearing, I felt as if I were not only being attacked for wearing a Korean branded bag, but for being the only Korean, the only Asian, the only immigrant, and the only outsider in the town. I wanted to detach myself from my identity as much as possible. I wanted to reject the years I have lived in my home country. I was no longer bringing Korean foods to school fairs, nor was teaching Korean to friends for fun. I bought a new backpack from Nordstrom, a JanSport right pack with a brown bottom compartment and a black JanSport logo above, big enough to renew my identity. Thank you.
Keep it going for everybody. All right. I think we might have set a 20-person reading world record. And I will, I want to, we got through it. I feel like the room was present. We felt it. I felt some deep breaths. There were some laughs. We laughed, we cried. And one of the things I was thinking about sitting there and hearing all of you was how, so in 10 days, I didn't do anything. You wrote 3 essays each and you revised one. That's a lot. Whose idea was this? It was mine. And in doing that, just hearing some of the ones where I heard the first draft and now I'm hearing the revised draft and hearing, oh, that's a new line. Oh, that's really good. Oh, you brought that out. How cool. It's all happening. It all happened. And I know that happened in part because you're all brilliant and also because you're all brilliant. What I mean by that is there are individually great writers here, 20 of them approximately, but a lot of that was not just individuals making their pieces better. It was the workshop circle. It was the Google Doc comments. It was you staying up past the recommended bedtime I heard a little of that, in Harnwell across the way. It was, catching David or Wes or Jesse at fruit break and asking a question, and reading aloud to each other and stuff. So a lot of these essays kind of have more than one author in a way, which is just so cool. So I'm so happy for you all. I'm so grateful to our friends who are kind of along the edges who joined us tonight, and everybody who's watching either live or later on YouTube. So I'm going to have us give one last round of applause. Then Zach's going to turn off the YouTube, and then I'm going to talk about a bunch of camp director things that the people on YouTube don't need to hear me say. So one last round of applause. Yay. Yay, friends. So